Here we go again, folks. You enjoyed our first attempt to explain as much of the Summers family tree as we possibly could, so much that we are back with more explanations for you when it comes to, well, the rest of the family tree that I did not have time to talk about in the previous video. Welcome back, Nerd Squad. I'm your host, Amanda McKnight. Once again, we'll be doing something a little bit different today. I'm going to attempt to explain the ancestry of the Summers family tree, mainly through Christopher Summers, Scott's dad, because, well, we don't know too much about Chris's wife, Catherine, and her heritage, alas. I'm also going to cover genetic offspring, alternate reality children, and attempt to explain the main family-related rumors that exist in the Marvel multiverse. Or the Summerverse if you prefer. I mean, Spider-Man has the Spider-Verse, Venom has the Venomverse. With all these Summers running around, I cannot believe that we do not have a Summerverse established yet. So, make sure you put on any safety equipment needed, ruby quartz shades on, as you prepare to once more have your mind blown by the complexity and insanity that is the Summers family tree. Let's go back in time to start. Last time we started with Cyclops and his parents, but this time we're going further back in time, answering the question of who are the Summers family grandparents. When Scott married Madeline Pryor, the two of them became pilots, with Scott moving to Anchorage, Alaska. If you think that sounds random, it actually isn't really at all. Anchorage is actually a place where Scott feels most at home. It's where he grew up before losing his parents and brother and having his life go pretty sideways. His grandparents, Philip and Deborah, were actually both born in Anchorage too. Philip also likely inspired his sons, Christopher's own passion for flight, as Philip himself joined the US Air Force and even served in World War II. Deborah and Philip were also a driving force likely in Madeline and Scott's choice to settle down and become involved in cargo pilotry, or the cargo plane industry. In fact, they were the ones that first introduced Scott to Madeline, who was actually working for them at the time, as they were the owners of the cargo plane business that she worked for. When they first learned that their son and his children had not perished years earlier in a tragic plane explosion but were alive and well, they invited them to visit. But due to it being the busy season, Philip and Deborah sent Madeline to meet and escort their family home to meet them, because they, were too busy to get there to greet them. Eventually, Philip and Deborah would sell their company to Nathaniel Essex. Years later, Philip would also end up meeting Adam X, who would later be revealed as the half Shi'ar, half mutant brother of Scott, Alex, and Gabriel. Philip was losing his eyesight at the time, and he lost control of his plane while flying, crashing, when Adam X happened to be passing nearby and decided to offer aid. Adam X saved Philip's life, but could not save his eyesight, and he would sadly go blind. Paying a visit to Philip in the hospital, he would run into Scott's then wife, Jean Grey, and have her link his mind to Philip's so that he could share with him memories of what Philip had most longed for in his life, to be a pilot in outer space, which Adam X had been during his time working for the Shi'ar. I just love that story. I think it's so sweet. As is typical, like with the late Catherine Summers, mother of Scott, Alex, Gabriel, and Adam X, and wife of Corsair, we do not know much about Deborah's heritage at all. But we do know a few things about Philip's heritage, so let's talk about that. Namely, we know he had an aunt named Gloria Dane, who was the daughter of his grandmother, Amanda Mueller, and likely a man that she hooked up with at some point, who I guess his last name was Dane. The kind of weird thing about this is that although Gloria was Philip's aunt, she's actually most likely younger than him in terms of when she was born. She was born in 1950 while he served in the military in World War II, so figure that out. This can likely be explained by the fact that his grandmother, Gloria's mother, Amanda, was immortal thanks to her mutant power. But we'll talk more about Amanda in a little bit. Gloria Dane went by the alias of Fontanelle and was a mutant with telepathic abilities, specifically good at deciphering and reading people's dreams. Originally, Fontanelle appeared as someone hired to figure out Gambit's involvement with the mutant massacre. However, after her contract to do so was terminated, she instead changed sides and decided to help Gambit uncover the mystery behind the person who had hired her new son, who turned out to be an alternate version of Gambit himself, actually, and help him to also figure out the mysterious woman known as Black Womb, who turned out to be Gloria's own mother, Amanda Mueller. This is probably as good a time as any to discuss the rumored connection connection of Gambit to the Summers family. And answer the question, is Gambit a Summers? Although at the time of this recording, to kind of answer that question, all it really remains, at least in the main continuity, is a rumor. After Mr. Sinister teased about a third Summers brother, there was much speculation as to who this could be. Initially, Fabian and Isaiah worked to leave a trail of breadcrumbs that led to Adam X, who was revealed to be the genetic son of Shi'ar Emperor Deken and Catherine Summers in the comics. Following that, there were hints that it might be Gambit, whose birth parents remain unknown in the comics. To help this rumor sort of gain more momentum, in an alternate future known as Earth 41001, seen in Christopher Claremont's X-Men The End, an alternate version of Gambit is revealed to be the hybrid clone of both Mr. Sinister and Scott Summers, although in my opinion that would actually make him more the genetic offspring of the two characters than Scott's and Alex's brother. It would be more like, Gambit is the son of Sinister and Scott together, which is a weird thought. Gambit, however, has never been established as a clone of either Sinister or Cyclops in the main continuity, or at least he hasn't been yet. A few years later, Vulcan was introduced in Ed Brubaker's X-Men Deadly Genesis, where he was revealed as the third Summers brother, Gabriel, being the son of both Catherine and Christopher Summers. As with much of comic book continuity though, it's good to keep in mind that it's quite fluid, but while it could change at any point, this is the latest in regards to where we are at with the third Summers brother rumor and revelation in the main continuity, with Vulcan being established currently as the answer to that mystery. Back to the mysterious Amanda Mueller though. Who is she, and what or who is Black Womb? Amanda Mueller is Scott's, Alex's, and Gabriel's great-great-grandmother, and has been speculated to be where the Summers X gene potentially originates. Amanda is also the mother of Philip's unnamed father and of Philip's aunt, Gloria Dane. As a young woman, she grew up in the 19th century and ended up entering into a deal with Nathaniel Essex after he discovered her mutant genes were very powerful and very formidable. The deal was she would marry and conceive children, but feigned that the pregnancies didn't actually come to term while actually delivering the newborns to Essex so that he might study their genetics. In exchange, it's believed that she was paid handsomely. While we don't know much about Mr. Dane, who was Gloria's father and presumably was at some point married to Amanda, we do know about her previous husband, Daniel Summers. He was the grandfather of Philip Summers, who likely never knew Philip, as he left his wife and son after Amanda was accused of being the Black Womb killer. His son would grow up, likely get married, and have a son of his own, becoming Philip's father. As a mutant, Amanda Mueller's powers involved longevity, rendering her essentially immortal, but not immune to the effects of aging, so her age continued to show and affect her appearance over time. Amanda Mueller would go on to become the leader of the government-run Black Womb Project, of which Kurt Marco, Brian Xavier, and Irene Adler were also a part of, with Kurt Marco and Brian Xavier even involving their own offspring, Kane Marco and Charles Xavier, in their experiments. At one point, Amanda Mueller attempted to steal Mr. Sinister's powers, but she failed, and whether alive or dead, she hasn't really been spotted since then. Philip's estranged grandfather, Daniel Summers, and his father, Oscar, are both interesting mind trips as well. Before Daniel married or even met Amanda Mueller in America, he actually lived in London, in England, and he was known by the name of Danny Edge. Danny's parents were murdered when he was young, and he ended up kidnapped by a group known as the Marauders. Not the current heroic Marauders that we know from the comics though, led by Captain Kate Pryde, but Nathaniel Essex's Mr. Sinister's first ever Marauders group. Essex had people kidnapped so that he might experiment on and keep them underground in secret in the sewers. However, Danny was one of the victims of Essex who was saved from Sinister's mad science by the time-traveling X-Men, Cyclops, and Phoenix, aka Scott Summers and Jean Grey. Yeah, I know! After being freed, he and a former member of the Marauders by the name of Oscar Stamp fled the UK to start a new life in America. At immigration, Oscar Stamp and Danny Edge claimed to be father and son, and inspired by the heroes who'd freed them both, took the surname of Summers, which means that Oscar was the adoptive, likely estranged great-great-great-grandparent of Scott and his brothers. Paradoxical, and that's pretty much as far back as we can go with the Summers family currently, in terms of ancestry. There are also ancestors on Jean's side of the family, but as I said in my previous Explain video, the Greys kinda really deserve their own list, because there's a lot of them. If there are other mutants you want to hear us explain the family trees of, let us know in the comments by the way, because I would love to dive into some more mutant family tree histories for you. The Frosts also have an interesting family tree as well, which could also be relevant in a video like this, as although I didn't focus on it in the previous video, Emma Frost is also known for being a major love interest of Scott's. Although the two were never formally wed, there are many alternate realities where the two of them have children as well. We focused on some of the more prominent Summers children in regards to their ties to the main continuity, but now we're going to dive into some of the more obscure ones as we discuss even more Summers family alternate kids. Speaking of Emma Frost, let's start off with another popular child of Scott's who happens to be the child of both he and Emma in an alternate version of the Days of Future Past reality. That's right, we're talking about Ruby Summers. While the original Days of Future Past reality is known as Earth 811, Ruby hails from the alternate of that alternate designated Earth 1191, the same reality that Lucas Bishop also hails from. Here Ruby is the daughter of Scott Summers and Emma Frost. In this reality, Ruby was given her name by the time-displaced Layla Mueller, a mutant who, unrelated to her mutant powers, also has precognitive abilities granted to her by her future self. Ruby also ends up falling in love with Trevor Fitzroy in this reality. Ruby is one of the mutants who ends up helping return Layla Mueller and Multiple Man, aka Jamie Madrox, do their own timeline. And she's just super cool. People love her. She's got a Ruby form. She's pretty awesome. In the Earth 1191 reality, a splintered alternate version of Cable exists, who is half-brother to Ruby. His whole existence is super confusing, but basically this version of Cable is responsible for bringing the mutant Messiah here, whose power caused an extermination level event which led to the Sentinels attacking the mutants. This is the future that Bishop warns us against during the Messiah Complex event, and which he is trying to prevent from happening, but you know, it happens anyways. In the alternate future of X-Men The End, Cyclops also has multiple children with Emma Frost, including their psionic daughter, Megan Summers, two also psionic unnamed twin girls, and a son named Alex. There is also an alternate version of Nathan Summers in this reality, who is the son of Scott and Madeline and goes by the codename Cable again. And Scott and Jean also have a daughter together in this reality named Rachel Summers, who goes by the codename of Marvel Girl. Gambit, who is also connected to the Summers family tree in the X-Men The End reality, also has children with his wife, Rogue. Together, they have 3 children. Their adopted daughter, who takes the name of Anne-Marie for herself and uses the alias No Name, Olivier, or Ollie, who goes by the alias Olivier Raven, and Rebecca Raven LeBeau. And obviously, because, you know, Gambit is kind of tied to the Summers, in that reality, this makes sense. Aside from these alternate children, Alex Summers, aka Havoc, also has another child from an alternate reality as well. Like Katie Summers, his son Scotty also hails from an alternate reality. This is a reality that Alex's consciousness was displaced to after being caught in a time machine explosion. Known as Mutant X, in the reality of Earth 1298, the X-Men team are instead known as the Six, and this reality's Alex was actually their leader. Havoc awoke inside his alternate self's body to learn that here, he and his wife Madeline Pryor had a son named Scott Charles Summers. After the birth of their child and the displacement of Alex of Earth 616's consciousness into his alternate self's body, Madeline would end up possessed and would basically become the Goblin Queen in this reality. While their son would save her temporarily, eventually she would revert to the Goblin Queen once more, and it was during Havoc's fight against her that he was sent back through a time rift and basically ended up back in his own body and on his own world in Earth 616. In this reality, Alex also had another genetic daughter in Raven LeBeau. She is the adopted daughter of Belladonna and Gambit, who is genetically created by honorary Summers family member Mr. Sinister, using the combined genes of Alex Summers and Jean Grey. Raven also has a genetic brother created by Mr. Sinister using Summers and Grey DNA, known as Nate Grey, whose origins are similar to that of his Earth 295 AOA counterpart. AOA being Age of Apocalypse. There are many clones who have cropped up over the years in regards to the Summers family tree, but listing all of them would take a while. We covered some of them on the first part of our video explaining the Summers family tree, but I left out a pretty odd one who is also connected to self-inserted family tree member Mr. Sinister as well. Zraven. Zraven is a weird one. He is a genetically created offspring who is technically related to both Scott and Jean, and also related kinda to Mr. Sinister and a bunch of other people as well. Mr. Sinister created Zraven in the main continuity of Earth 616, combining together the DNA of the original X-Men team, the original Kraven the Hunter, and the Carnage symbiote, with Sinister being Zraven's creator. Sinister attempted to use Zraven to acquire more samples of mutant DNA, but ultimately Zraven would rebel against him after learning from Cyclops the truth about, how Sinister treats his favored creations and experiments. Raven dodged a bullet there, really. While there are likely more clones and alternate reality children I could focus on for this video, I'd like to take a moment to also acknowledge one more grandchild that I left out on part 1. We talked about Hope Summers and Tyler Dayspring there, but now we're talking about the alternate reality grandson of the alternate reality Jean and Scott from Earth 967. Hyperstorm is the son of Rachel Summers and Franklin Richards, a pretty weird combination if I do say so myself. Jonathan Richards hails from the alternate reality of Earth 967, which is yet another alternate take on the alternate reality of Earth 811, Days of Future Past. Here Scott and Jean have another daughter named Rachel Summers, and she ends up falling in love with and marrying the son of Sue Storm and Reed Richards, Franklin. As such, Hyperstorm is known for being extremely powerful, wielding a force known as the Supreme Force, which in essence allows him to tap into the infinite psionic power of hyperspace to accomplish many impressive feats. Jonathan is also known for his beyond genius intellect. And although I could talk about Summers' family all day, we've pretty much covered most of the family tree at this point, and also I'm pretty much out of time, though there still might be some alternate reality kids and grandkids to discuss if you would like on a potential part 3. If that's what you want, you let me know. And of course a few more clones that I could also talk about, because there are always clones, especially when Mr. Sinister is around. Are you a fan of the Summers family tree? Is there an alternate reality that you like best when it comes to the Summers family tree and their alternate realities? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Thanks for listening to me do my splaining. Until next time, you stay nerdy, YouTube.